The Dead Sea Scrolls also shed new light on the unique genre of ancient Jewish mysticism known as Kabbalah, which until now has been preserved in documents dating from early medieval times. Of course, the contents of this literature are far older and were certainly passed down by word of mouth, long before being recorded in medieval sources. Now, thanks to a single Dead Sea Scroll, we have a clear reference to the kind of mysticism called in Hebrew Merkavah, referring to the chariot throne of God. The text consists of a series of liturgical poems, psalms said to have been chanted, not by human beings, but by a supernatural host of angels. These are the songs uttered on high in the celestial temple as the Sabbath sacrifices are offered up by the priests in the temple below. There's no question that this Dead Sea text, called the Songs of Sabbath Sacrifices, is a mystical document, the most ancient example of Kabbalah known to exist in the world. We do not know precisely who the author of the Songs of Sabbath Sacrifices was or when he lived, but the document he composed, discovered both at the caves of Qumran and the rocky plateau called Masada, is perhaps the great missing link in understanding the evolution of Kabbalah. Here we have a transitional text which stands between the early mysticism of Apocrypha and Pseudepigrapha and the later flowering of the mystical tradition in medieval times. The author gives us a series of liturgical hymns in the mouths of the angels on high, which accompany the weekly burnt offering in the Jerusalem temple on the Sabbath. Each Sabbath sacrifice had its own special significance and its own name, transmitting the teachings of the Qumran sect. In it, we read, Galgale kvodo kemar'e esh, ruchot kodesh kodashim, sviv mar'e shvile esh bidmut chashmal. The passage clearly harkens back to the prophet Ezekiel, whose visions and revelations are the stuff of legend. The angelic host in the Songs of Sabbath Sacrifices serve in a spiritual temple of which the earthly shrine is merely a copy. They are supernatural counterparts of the Jerusalemite priests of flesh and blood. It is they whose songs are recorded. The document goes on to describe the actual utterance of the angels, their song. Kol dmamat Elokim nishma, v'hamon rina, berim kanfehem, kol dmamat Elokim, tavnit kiseh, merkava merkavim, mima'al rakia hakruvim. It is a vivid picture of the unseen realm of the divine presence. It is nearly the same vision seen by the prophet Ezekiel centuries earlier, describing a heavenly chariot carrying the exalted throne of God. Ezekiel describes 4 angelic beings, yet his focus is on God and his throne. But the Dead Sea text fills in the blanks about the angels. Udmut hapanim, echad ari, echad nesher, ve'echad egel, ve'echad shel adam, v'haita yad adam, machberet migabe hachayot, v'davka bekanfehen, v'haofanim ofen chubar, el ofen bilechtan, ומשני עברי האופנים שבילי אש, והיה בתוך גחלים, חיות כגחלי אש. The emphasis here is on the visual senses, on light and fire, designating the presence of living spirits. Moreover, the writer of this scroll appears to be describing something that he has actually witnessed, a purely supernatural apparition, Next, the writer describes in detail the movement of the angels and what he hears audibly. Ruchot Elokim Chaim mitalchim tamid im kavod merkavat hapele v'kol dmamat berech kehamon lechtam v'hilelu kodesh v'heshiv darkehem beharomam yeromemu pele uv'shochen ya'amdu kol gilot rina hishkit udmamat berech Elokim bechol machane Elokim. Their very words have power and seem to fall into groups of 7, each set emphasizing a central theme: nobility, sublime truth, and mystical prowess. We read the following. Yevarech b'shiv'a divrei pele, uverech lechol no'adei tzedek. In the end, everything comes back to true knowledge and to laying a foundation of truth, uprightness, and exemplary character. In the 1960s, when the ancient Judean fortress known as Masada was being excavated, several fragments of the songs of Sabbath sacrifices were found among the ruins near the ancient synagogue. This is haunting and compelling evidence that members of the Dead Sea sect must have occupied Masada before the final siege by the Romans. Perhaps they realized that the Roman legions were en route to their desert headquarters at Qumran and decided that their apocalyptic visions were coming to pass. It was then that they hastily made their way due south along the western shore of the Dead Sea, ultimately joining the company of die-hard rebels who occupied the great rocky promontory. There they met their end among the 960 souls who took their own lives rather than submit to Roman slavery. Much speculation and conjecture revolves around their last days and why they chose to bring the songs of Sabbath sacrifices with them. But the mystical words of this document have survived the ravages of time as written witnesses of one of the most volatile and consequential moments in human history.